Arabia are hence expected. It is interesting to note that Saudi Arabia has become the first country to be directly involved in the China-Pakistan economic corridor, and it will be interesting to see how this new trilateral cooperation unfolds. Now, to talk more about this development, we have as our guest prominent business analyst and journalist, Mr. Hasaan Khawar is on the telephone with us. Hasaan Saab, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Right, yeah, well, you, of course, heard the description of the addition to the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which everyone is welcoming. Saudi Arabia becoming the first country, aside of Pakistan and the People's Republic of China, to actually join in the venture. How do you see this? How do you see the news that Saudi Arabia is going to be involved in the China-Pakistan economic corridor?
I think it's a very healthy news because it means that we are opening up not just to China, but also to other countries, and we are inviting investment from a number of countries. But when Prime Minister Imran Khan announced that he would be going to Saudi Arabia, everyone knew that this visit was in the context of seeking a bailout package. Mm-hmm. But people actually believed that the bailout package would come in terms of either concessional terms for oil supply, or it will be some government-to-government lending.
Right.
And when the CPEC news came in, people were surprised. And I think what PTI government is trying to do is to get some credit. Because if you look at CPEC, whether we like it or we don't like it, people will always give credit to PMLN for initiating the project. And for PTI government, it makes perfect sense to kind of have a new narrative that they are giving a new meaning to CPEC by opening it up so that people could also give some credit to the PTI government. So I would look at it from two dimensions. One is, of course, the bailout part, but other is the political reason.
Political reason. Okay. Yeah, Hasaan, certainly got you there, what you're trying to say. Now, the question arises, and a lot of people are talking about this, certainly experts are. We've always heard that the International Monetary Fund, would be essential to Pakistan's ambitions of raising funds. The question arises, could big Saudi investments overcome Pakistan's need to go to the IMF? Could that be preempted, or would we still have to go to the IMF, considering the amount of money, the huge amount of money that we need?
I think, sir, what we are looking at right now is an investment need of about $8 to $12 billion.
Right.
Now, the question is whether the Saudi investment and the Chinese investment could altogether come around to that number in a fairly short span of time. If we could get to that number, I think we might not end up going to IMF, but I think it's still yet to be seen. And I think in the first week of October, when Pakistan would have already had early IMF meetings and the Saudi delegation will be here, I think it's only then when we can have some clarity that whether this investment is going to be in conjunction with IMF financing or it's going to be an alternative to IMF financing.
Okay. So in other words, you say that it is possible, it is just possible that we could raise enough money from these countries to not have to go to the International Monetary Fund. That is possible, is what you're saying?
Absolutely, it's possible.
Okay.
But there is another spin to that. So the reason that we are looking for alternative means is that wherever IMF would come in, they would come in with harsh conditions.
Right.
And they will ask us to put in fiscal discipline. And my concern is that we should not look at Chinese and Saudi financing as a way to avoid harsh decisions. Because unless and until we enforce fiscal discipline, we can very well end up in this situation again, even if Saudi and Chinese financing bails us out right now. Right. So I think IMF funding is always a double-edged sword.
Right.
So yes, it could initiate some regression in the economy because it's like they are aggressive measures, but they also bring in the much-needed discipline.
Okay.
And what we need is some fiscal discipline.
I see. Yeah, that's something we definitely need. Now, Saudi Arabia joining in means that another country, a third country, is going to join in, which means that it's going to be a trilateral arrangement. Could it disrupt CPEC in any way, or would it only help? What if the Saudis have demands of their own, which China and Pakistan do not accede to?
Deeksha, my first response to this is that I would feel that Pakistan would have absolutely taken China in confidence on inclusion of Saudi Arabia, and we could not afford jeopardizing our relationship with any unilateral move. Now, when you look at CPEC, CPEC is part of the larger Belt and Road Initiative, which already has about 68 to 70 countries in its fold.
Right.
And Saudis are an economic partner of Chinese, and China has been relying on Saudis for its crude oil supplies. And when you look at the last year's visit of Saudi King to China, they agreed on multi-billion-dollar deals in oil refineries and petrochemical industries.
Yeah.
So in that context, I would think that Gwadar mega oil city that has been named in this regard can be an ideal candidate for a tripartite partnership where a refinery could be set up and China could secure its oil supply via Gwadar, which has long been a concern for China, the vulnerability of its sea shipping lanes for oil transport.
Okay.
So I would think this is a good point to meet for the three countries to agree.
Okay. Now, if more countries were to join into the China-Pakistan economic corridor, would that be a boon or a bane, you think? Would that help the project, or would it cause disruptions? How do you see it?
I think so more the merrier. So if we can invite more countries into the CPEC fold, it means that we are going to claim more investment.
Okay.
But there is a caveat.
Yeah.
We must keep in view the regional peace and stability. Because if Saudis are going to set base at Gwadar, that's going to make Iran very, very uncomfortable. Secondly, there is a sentiment in Pakistan that if we can get Saudi and Chinese financing, we are becoming independent and we are saying no to United States. So I think we should not look at this funding as an opportunity to alienate US. That's not going to fare well for Pakistan.
Right.
And I think that Saudis, being a good US ally, we should use them to, in fact, bring US and China on the same page on the issue of CPEC rather than thinking in terms of creating another silo.
Okay.
And only then we can expect more connectivity and more cooperation and more economic growth.
Okay. Now, as far as our economy is concerned, the Middle Eastern countries, how important or how significant can they be in helping us put our economy on track? Can they play a pronounced role? Because it seems to me that the new Prime Minister is banking on that to a great extent. Can the Middle East play that role for Pakistan's economy?
In some ways, Riksab, it could. In other ways, it cannot. So Middle East, for example, cannot put our house in order for us.
Right.
It cannot help us in putting in fiscal discipline, containing leakages, turning around our state-owned enterprises. But when you look at balance of payment, of course, if we can get some investment or FDI from Middle Eastern countries, which have been our reliable partners for many years, that could definitely have a very, very positive impact on a balance of payment.
Okay.
But we have to realize that at the end of the day, even FDI is dependent upon the governance in the country, the corruption, and the impediments that the investors face, and the cost of doing business. And until and unless we fix it, yes, we can expect some help here and some help there, but we cannot ensure a sustained flow of FDI.
Okay.
So we will have to put our act together within our own country.
Okay. So just a few seconds here left. I want to get your input on a final question. People are talking about a quid pro quo here. They're saying, well, the Saudis are joining CPEC, but they will expect something in return from Pakistan, like joining the coalition in Yemen or something like that. How concerned are you about that?
Absolutely, it will have to be a quid pro quo because, supreme always the national interest, and if Saudis are helping us out, they would want something in return. And as you could see, that Pakistan has already supported Saudi's stance in Yemen. So I think that concern remains there. And it depends on the new government now that how balanced an act it can put together in the wake of Saudi demands.
Right.
But that still remains to be seen.
Thank you, Hasaan Saab. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Hasaan Khawar, a prominent business analyst and journalist, expressing his opinion on the Saudis joining the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Obviously, he says on balance, it's a very positive development. Remains to be seen, of course, how many more countries join in, because as he said, in his words, the more the merrier, more investment will come in. That can only help, of course.